Welcome everyone to the 2020 APAC Groundbreakers Virtual Tour by Apaco UC. This year, our event will be the biggest one ever done with 174 sessions, including normal sessions, workshops, and hands-on labs from 123 different speakers over 11 days. Also, it will cover sessions on 4 different languages. Please remember to register as many sessions as you can, and all sessions will be available to replay as many times as you want for 2 weeks after the initial date and time of the session. You can also interact with the speaker at any time during that 2 weeks by posting questions and comments directly in the playback session page. I would like to say thanks to all Oracle user groups and Java user groups that made this event possible, and also to our sponsors, Oracle Groundbreakers and CloudDB. Now for today's session, Moving the Cloud with Minimal Downtime Using Oracle ZDM by Gleb Otochkin. Hopefully I pronounce your surname properly, Gleb.
That's right.
Please feel free to write questions at any time during the session at the Q&A tab of the Zoom webinar, and the speaker will be answering them at the end of the session. If any issues during the presentation or you have any questions to the organization, please feel free to contact me as moderator by using the chat tab in the Zoom webinar. That means questions to the speaker, please use the Q&A tab, and Gleb will be answering at the end of the session. Questions about issues or anything else to the organization, please let me know using the chat option. Now, without any more delays, I would like to leave you with this amazing session by Gleb Otochkin. Okay, Gleb, I'm stop sharing my session. I can see you in camera. Now, if you can share your presentation.
All right, play from start. Thank you very much, Francisca, for the introduction. I hope you have good time during the conference, everyone. I believe you are in hot, sunny place like Canberra, Sydney, or any other good places. I'm sitting here in Ottawa, Canada. It is rainy, it is midnight exactly, and it is really cold outside. All right, the session is about migrating your databases using Oracle Zero Downtime Migration tool. A couple of words about myself. My name is Gleb Otochkin. I live and work in Canada, in Ottawa. I'm working with different Oracle technologies and more than 20 years. I'm part of Oracle ACE program, and here my email or my blog and my Twitter. So don't be shy, connect to me, and just send me some questions if you have any questions about Zero Downtime Migration tool or any other topics. I'm working a lot with Oracle Engineering Systems, Oracle Cloud, with Oracle Exadata Cloud at Customer. I have another session on the same conference about Oracle Exadata Cloud at Customer later. All right. We have only 45 minutes, so let's talk. The first question about migration, why people move and where people move. People move Oracle databases by multiple different reasons. It could be aging hardware. You move to consolidate your database for cost optimization for many different reasons, or you have probably some goals. For example, idea that you are moving to the cloud. And that idea is probably the main idea, cloud first strategy for many companies right now. For last year, I don't remember any migration of like massive migration of Oracle database to another hardware on another data center or on the same data center, except probably one, but it is, again, that migration is just a step before moving to the cloud. People generally move either to public cloud or hybrid cloud, like Exadata Cloud at Customer, when they have some limitation and restrictions, sometimes legal restrictions to move to public cloud. So we all know what kind of changes you can expect when you move. Generally, I would speak about 4 main challenges from my point of view. You may find another 10. From my point of view, we have time, effort, skills, and mistakes, human mistakes. Let's talk about time. Business requirements for downtime sometimes is quite strict. And sometimes you don't have enough time for migration by any easy way, I would say, like export, logical export, import, or physical migration, copying of data files using backup and recovery. The second problem with time, not only downtime itself, but the matter how many databases you can move, prepare, and migrate in a month. That's all right if you have only a few databases, like 3 or 4. But if you have a task to move about 200 or 300 databases, it can be quite challenging. And a question from your manager, hey man, how much time you can live without sleep? That's sometimes quite interesting question. But the problem is you are migrating databases pretty often in weekends and in night time when the load is minimal and impact to your business is minimal. Effort. It could be fun to move 200-300 databases, but when it is 200-300 databases to the cloud, it is not really fun anymore. It is a grueling exercise. Each database, you prepare source, prepare target, copy data, you do switchover. If you move it by data guard, if you move it by any other way, you do additional tasks, upgrade patch. And how many people in your team? How can you share your work? And in meanwhile, the application team is not leaving you alone. You still have obligations to support your application releases. You have obligations to tune your SQL queries and do all other million of different tasks. So the effort is quite grueling. It is quite significant. Skills, you still need to know, for example, transparent data encryption, backup and recovery, data guard, and million other technologies. You still need to execute again, copy data, set up data guard, encrypt, switch over, repeat. Copy data, set up data guard, encrypt, switch over, repeat. You need knowledge and experience to build your skills, and nobody can know everything. Everybody has to repeat it again and repeat it again to get experience. And how useful that new experience about migrating 200 databases from 12.2 to 19.7 in the future? Probably if you are a consultant working in that field, but if you in-house DBA, probably it is not too much useful. It is good to know, but I don't think you need to repeat it 200-300 times to know it well. So that one part. Another part is when you do a massive migration, you make mistakes. Run copy paste, run terminal, miss with order of the tasks. Sometimes just sheer fatigue from several weekends and days without proper sleep during the night. You try and shortcut, sometimes it doesn't work. So many different reasons to try to minimize the effort and automate your tasks. And here we are coming to the main point of our discussion. Oracle prepared the tool, Oracle called ZDM, Zero Downtime Migration Tool. And the tool is orchestration tool for migration. The Zero Downtime Migration Tool itself is not pumping a data from source to the target, but it sent a command to source database and target database and making them connect together and migrate the data. It's orchestration tool for migration. It can help with downtime. It can help to reduce effort. It can help with automation, which is main point of automation, not only reduce effort, but eliminate human mistakes when you deliver the service. What it cannot help with so far with capacity planning, you have to do your diligence by yourself. You have to prepare the source and target database. It doesn't do it for you. And it cannot migrate between different platform and or database releases. As I heard, I cannot know that because I'm not an Oracle employee, and only Ricardo Gonzalez probably knows for sure that migration between different platforms is coming. Is what I heard, and I hope it will come. But so far, you cannot migrate between different platforms. In general, how it works. So you have a ZDM host. In theory, you can install ZDM tool itself on source or target, but I don't think it makes too much sense from my experience working with the tool on production. You don't set up it once per each migration. It is just useless waste of effort. Usually you set it up in intermediate virtual machine or box and run that migration for multiple source and targets. That makes sense. The data are not coming through ZDM box at all. What you need from ZDM box is SSH connection to source and target. That is enough to migrate. The tool is based on proven and long-known technologies. It is Oracle Data Guard, Rapid Home Provisioning, Recovery Manager, Oracle Backup Cloud. Not too much more than that you need really to migrate your Oracle database. The general workflow is ZDM setting up a SSH connection to source and target, gather information, set up source, set up target, validate all parameters, back up the source database, copy the files, run clone for standby on destination site. During the clone for standby, it encrypts data files. So if your source database is not encrypted, your target will be automatically encrypted during the clone procedure. Then it is setting up the data guard standby in mixed mode when your primary is not encrypted and standby is already encrypted, and then perform switchover post-migration tasks and clean up. So that's general workflow. I will be brave and try to share my terminal. So I have here ZDM box. I hope you see my screen. I checked in the recording on Zoom. It was more or less visible. So here the ZDM box. It is virtual machine. I'm using Oracle Cloud because it is easy to create the environment using Terraform and wipe it out after the tests. So here what I have is, let me put it here. I have ZDM box. I have source database. The source database 12.201 database. It is represent your on-prem, for example, environment. The database is not encrypted. If I, select double space. As you can see, nothing encrypted. Particularly, we are interested in tablespace users. With users' data. So it is not encrypted tablespace. The same about the test PDB as well. And the test PDB is not encrypted too. As a target, I have Oracle Database as a Service. And it has slightly different default pluggable database created when you create a database as a service and not specify any pluggable database name. It is just creating default pluggable database. But the main point, the same version of the database, slightly different patch level for sure. And it is already encrypted with transparent data encryption. So what we are going to do, I'm going to start the migration during our presentation right now. Then we are going to talk through slides, and we are going to check from time to time how it is going, right? So the first useful command, I will talk about some parameters and commands a little bit later, but it is command to list phases. The phases will show you where you can set up your break points, stop points for your migration. The reason why you want to do that, because when you start your migration, you usually start before actual cutover time. And you need to stop, pause, and let data guard work replicating data until actual cutover time. So what I'm going to put here, I'm going to put parameter pause after configuring data guard source. So it means it will create the standby, set up replication, let it run in, but will not switch over to the cloud environment. So let's start it. It is gonna ask me the database password and password. Oh, sorry, I pause. No. Pause. Oh, I forgot to put. All right, that one. So it is going to ask me about data sys password for my database. I'm going to provide that password here. And authentication token for my cloud storage. So the database job ID is 18, and we will be checking from time to time the database, how it is going. So let me return back to my slides. Where is it? Here. And we will talk, right, what we need to do to set it up. So that steps I will not be showing on in real life. So on the source and on the target, you need to prepare your source and target. So on the source first and on the target, of course, you need to set up SSH connection from ZDM. So how you do that? You create a user which proper privileges, pseudo privileges on your source environment and your target environment, of course, and create a passwordless SSH connection to the source and target based on SSH keys. You enable encryption on source. What I mean by enabling encryption, you don't need to encrypt anything, but you have to create a transparent data encryption key. Key store and key for your container database and all pluggable databases, or if it is not non-CDB database, for your source database. Then you, of course, need to be in archive log mode. As we know, force login is strongly recommended for data guard. You need to verify your patching level. Why? I will tell a little bit later. The reason, because by default, ZDM tool would, if you don't specify any parameters about patching level, will abort the job if your patching level different even by one patch on the source and target. So it expects to be completely identical, but you can specify a parameter to skip some set of patches, list of patches, or skip any check for patch level during the execution. You need to prepare your backup location. It could be either NFS or Oracle Object Storage or ZLDR appliance. And verify TNS access to the target. You have to, because data guard will be connected through TNS. On the target, you have to create a shell database. If it is a database as a service, you create a database as a service, a virtual machine or bare metal. If it is Exadata Cloud Customer, you create a shell database using Exadata Cloud Customer interface and so on. Again, check your patch level. make sure that you know what kind of parameters specify and TNS access to the source. And because after switchover, it will be proper data guard switchover with replication back. The minimum response file with backup on NFS, it is just few parameters, really only 1, 2, 3, 4 parameters in 19.7. So you have to specify target database unique name, migration method. In case of NFS, backup on NFS, it is DG_storage path. And platform type, it is VMDB, means is database as a service in Oracle Cloud. And backup path, if it is NFS location. In case of storage on object storage, backup to the object storage, you will need to specify the URL for your tenancy backup, tenancy to your object storage, and name for the bucket. In 19.2, you should specify also data storage parameters for target database. In 19.7, this is optional. It will discover the existing and will reuse it from the database on target you pre-created before migration. You have some optional parameters: proxy for connection, time zone, ZLDRA parameters, OCI, object storage for backup, and some other parameters. I will not go through all the parameters. It would be a few, presentation will be dedicated only to parameters in that case. So the new 19.7 version of ZDM was released by the end last week. It was quite exciting from one side, it's quite challenging from other side, because I got news, I believe, in Thursday, and I had only a couple of days, 3 days, to test all the new features and how it works in comparison with 19.2, which I was working since last year. It was quite interesting, but I can say that 19.7 is much more stable from my experience working with it. It has fixed quite a few bugs. It works according to documentation. In some cases, 19.2 was a little bit not complete, too many unfinished tasks. It is like we had parameters in a response file which were not working and so on. But 19.7 is much more durable and stable release. New parameters regarding backup monitoring, SSH, and access to object storage has a retry option for resiliency. It can retry several times if connection is unstable. You can specify TNS admin for the source database and data patch behavior, how and how long it should be executed after migration. You can use now auto login wallet for SYS and TDE for command line. You can specify it on ZDM box or on source and target box, on source box as well. And you can upload all the logs from ZDM execution to Oracle Object Storage. That is quite useful if you want to analyze them later. New behavior, you have new staging location on source and targets. If you have worked it already in the past with ZDM tool, you probably know that in the past it was a TMP/TMP ZDM and unique identifier for the job. So it is not the case anymore. Now it is creating the staging with all the files and logs in Oracle base for source and for the target database. On target, Oracle home and data location is using auto discovery. You don't specify it explicitly in your command line parameters. That's good. I think less parameters you need to specify is better. Couple of words about how it can reduce downtime. As we speak, you probably realize that Oracle Data Guard is cornerstone of ZDM. And your downtime for database is your switchover. and potentially the data patch running after switchover if you have different patch level. In ideal situation, when you have exactly the same patch level, it is just switchover between two databases. Primary and standby role transition will take place maybe in less than a minute. Encryption of data in advance of the switchover, it means your data guard is running in mixed mode, non-encrypted, for example, primary database and encrypted standby, and after switchover, you are getting encrypted data, your data will be already encrypted. ZDM does it automatically for 12.2, 18C, and 19C database, but doesn't do it for 11 and 12.1. For 11, 12.1, you have to do it manually after switchover, or you can do it in the middle. Potentially, you can pause your execution of ZDM as we did right now during our demo. And then when the replication is running, it is just simple data guard replication. You can stop it, encrypt your data files, resume replication, and wait for complete the switchover. So that is possible scenario. Post-migration tasks are automated as well, like data patch and cleanup. But how much in reality really depends, not even mostly from database, from my experience, it mostly depends on the application side. So if you prepare everything, all changes in TNS application in advance, your switchover will be really quick. If you have a lot of tasks to perform during that task, that small but necessary task, like you have to change your DNS, for example, if you use DNS alias for connection, you have to change your TNS names on some servers and maybe on database server as well to run some DB links. And you have to perform some functional and regression testing for acceptance testing on new environments. So that is probably taking more time than actual migration task. Let's have a look really quick how we are doing on our migration. So what we can do, we can query the job. So let's have a look to the job. And it is actually completed most of the tasks. Now it is running a clone of the database. So far you can see all the phases. It is it is received all target and source information, prepared everything, back it up the database to. I'm using Oracle Object Storage as a backup destination here. So it is it put everything to Oracle Cloud bucket, and now it is cloning the target environment for standby. So if we probably it is already exactly, yes. So it is now it is Arman clone on the target using backup in Oracle Cloud. So let's go back to our presentation here. Effort. You probably noticed that I'm not doing too much about migration right now, right? It is running by itself. It is a lot of tasks and they are executed by itself. So what we did, we reduced our effort. That is one thing. The second, you can set up ZDM box once and reuse it multiple times. It reduces effort tremendously. I'm using Terraform and I'm using a custom pre-built image with ZDM in OCI. So I installed ZDM once. First, I was planning to install it using Terraform scripts and automation. And then I just realized that I don't really need it. If I install it for my environment, I can just use custom image, which is probably sufficient for my, maybe not so cool, and probably I will do fully automatic install, but even with custom image, it is quite a reduction of required task and effort. So you still need skills. You need skills to prepare and set it up. You need skills to troubleshoot it if it is failing in some on some stage. But you don't really need skills to execute. You just run command and repeat and probably babysit execution check in the stage. Probably you can share that with, if you are better in one stuff and your colleague is better, for example, in SQL tuning, but has no desire to know more about database migration, you still can rely to that colleague and tell, okay, guys, I prepared everything. Can you execute it and call me if something is going wrong? So it is how you share your load, how you automate, and how you spread the load between your team members. So it is quite useful from my experience. Some technical consideration about that tool. Same endian format, it is Linux environment. So it is, and it makes sense because the main goal was to move, in some sense it makes sense. Sorry for the phrase. In Oracle Cloud, you have Linux environment. Whatever cloud you're going to use, the database cloud service, Oracle Exadata cloud service, Oracle Exadata Cloud at customers, all of them based on Linux. The tool I heard, I don't know when and how it will look, will be able to use cross-platform migration using some probably logical replication or transportable tablespaces. I don't know exactly, but it will probably be available in some time. But so far it is Linux environment. It is one-to-one migration, and it makes sense if you just realize how it works. It is duplicating database for standby. Of course, it is one-to-one. If you have non-CDB on source, it will be non-CDB on target. If you have container database on source, it will be container database on target. You have to do manual encryption for 11G and 12.1. When it is different question, you still need to understand, you probably need to pause and do it before actual cutover time, because 11G and 12.1 supports that mixed mode for standby. Version patch level, you need to take in consideration that default configuration is supposed to work only with the same patch level, but you still can have some different patch levels. You can still, because it is executing data patch after migration anyway, right? SSH-based connection from ZDM host to source and target with privileged users. What I mean privileged user is user which can run sudo command almost for everything. It is like OPC user in Oracle Cloud. You know, if you don't know, in Oracle Cloud, when you create any host or database as a server, you get access through SSH to OPC user, and that OPC user has a privilege sudo to root or to Oracle user or to grid user. So that type of user requires for ZDM on the source as well, not only in the cloud. Name resolution for source, target and scan, because if source database cannot recognize the scan name and cannot identify the IP addresses assigned to scan, it will be failing because it is connecting through the scan. And firewall, don't forget about firewall settings. How we're doing? 34 minutes. So source and target, let's talk about typical scenarios. Source and target, the same 11G R2 or the same 12.1 O2. You setting up ZDM, run migration job, encrypt tablespace, verify. Simple. Manual step encrypt tablespaces. You have to do that by yourself. It is not big deal, but you still have to do that. Source and target 12.201 or newer, it is like 18 or 19C database. You set up ZDM, run migration job, verify, you're done. That's it. What I see more often, you have, for example, 12.201 and target 19.7. What you do in that case? So It is not officially supported configuration for ZDM, not at all. It is not supposed to run in such configuration, but you can set up ZDM, you can run migration, and your switchover will be aborted. It will be failing task. It will be failing phase in your during your execution. So you set it up, and replication is going to work from 12.1 to 19.7 because 19.7 is higher release than 12.1. Switchover will not work, and during the switchover, your database will not be able to start. What you do, you start up upgrade, then run your upgrade script. Then after upgrade script, run utlrp SQL utility. Where you have it in your Oracle home, and then you verify. And in my experience, only few cases when it was required some deep troubleshooting when it was not working, but in most of the cases, like more than 90% of cases, it was working like a charm. You are getting the database. Yes, you cannot replicate back all the changes, but you're already in the cloud. That works fine. A little bit more advanced scenario, even probably more often, because you on the source you have non-CDB 12.201, for example, database, and target you have CDB container database with multiple pluggable database, and you need to put your non-CDB 12.201 inside your 19.7 container. The ZDM tool, if you try to put your target database, that 19.7 database, it will wipe it out, delete all the already probably migrated databases. So what you do, you prepare some staging Oracle Home 12.201 on the cloud, in the cloud. You can do it even on database as a service. Of course, you can do it on ExaCS or ExaCC. Then you create some dummy instance like simple database from template there and with the same database name. Then you run migration. It will run switchover. Everything will be fine. And you will have the database 12.201 on the destination non-CDB database already encrypted. So you run the package dbms pdb describe. It will upload information about your database to XML file. And then using that XML file, you plug that database to the target 19.7. And in the target 19.7, you run upgrade for PDB, one PDB, you just plug it in. And after running upgrade, you run the script non-CDB to pdb.sql. You have that script in Oracle Home, and your database is inside 19.7 as a pluggable database. And that approach works really well. In my experience, we migrated multiple databases by this way. So that, and I found is quite useful because the step of migration for the staging saved a lot of time and effort for DBAs. So useful options, list phases. You already have seen the list phases option. The pause after, it is one of the main options you're going to use because you have to set up breakpoints. Usually you prepare your migration in advance, as we did. We set up breakpoints before switchover, and then you can use it with resume job as well. The password for OCI account for object storage is not a password, it's authentication token. I spent a week figuring that out. Probably I'm not so smart as I look. Source seed is parameter if your source database is not on grid infrastructure. By default, the ZDM assumes that target and destination source are on the grid infrastructure databases, and it is trying to connect to check the servicetl tool, but if your database is not on grid infrastructure, it will fail. Ignore missing patches. If you know, for example, a couple of patches are missing on the source, that's quite useful. Ignore all. It is like ignore all patch differences. For resume job, pause after. Use it for resume job if it is failing on some step and you want to resume job, but you want the job to stop in some point of time. Here the typical, it looks scary, but in reality, it is not really difficult. You see that ZDM CLI migrate database, you have source as I see it for the database, host name, type for authentication, and destination parameters. Not too many parameters. In reality, it is quite simple when you just split. It looks only quite unwieldy and wild. You can, when you run, for example, evaluation here in that example, it is checking and all the step execution are logged, and you see result file path log file. So,
hi Gleb.
Yep.
5 minutes more.
Thanks. Do we have any questions so far?
No, you can go a little bit just because I need to moderate another session after the end.
Okay.
I have a little bit of time, but no problem.
Yeah, all right. So parameter pause after help to pause the job after certain pause of execution. And resume job is using the same parameter. Unfortunately, it is some, I don't know why it was not documented in original documentation, but it is quite useful. I'm using it all the time. Important, if you specify, for example, you specify pause after ZDM copy files, and then you run it again, it will run until the end. Keep it in mind. It will not just do nothing. It will run from that step until the very end. It is quite hard to stop it when it is running, by the way, just to make it clear. Be careful. Logs are in ZDM based on ZDM host, check based scheduled on the source and target. It is on Oracle base. It creates a subdirectory ZDM and ZDM DB unique name job number. So evaluation doesn't do all the steps, and sometimes it can some miss for troubleshooting. Sometimes it is quite easier to run migrate database job with pause after than evaluation. Verify pseudo privileges for user you use for connection for ZDM backs. As I said, it requires a lot of really root privileges to run pseudo for different operations. Space in Oracle base, keep in mind, ZDM doesn't take too much space, but it still takes some space. And name resolution for scan. Let's go to my terminal and see how we're doing here. Let's query the job. I hope we have 2 minutes before. So what we are doing, we already completed all our steps. We need only just resume job. So I'm resuming the job, and it should complete all our switchover. Let's do that. In cloud host, if we connect, this physical standby. So we have 2 minutes. I hope it will be able to complete in those 2 minutes. Let's tail the first. It will be running the switchover on the source.
Gleb, if you need a little bit more time, that's not a problem.
All right, I probably need a couple of more minutes just to complete the demo.
Sounds good, no problem, take your time.
Yep, all right, thank you. Let's have a look how it works. It should be, what I found, when you start the job, it takes 1 minute before execution just for scheduling. In that point of time, you still have time to abort the job. And abort job is quite simple. Instead of query job, you run ZDM CLI, abort job, job ID, and number for the job, and it will stop everything. So the current status is executing, and it should start that particular switchover on standby. And let's use 01. RGBMS trace, or RGBMS. Tells us that it is executing. Oh, it is started eventually. It is not in pending state, it is started. ZDM switchover source. So, and in alert log, we can see that it is running actual database role transition for physical database. So you can see that it is doing the final archive log destination and adding standby location, restarting in mount mode, and preparing for making that as physical standby. So you can see it in the screen that alter database require managed standby database. So that is completed. Now we can see on the other side, it is possible network disconnect with primary database. That's actually quite expected because the primary database is already non-primary database. It is standby database. Now the next step is going to be switchover target, and switchover source is completed. Now it is running switchover target, and we can see that it is shutting down the database. Because it is completed alter database commit switchover to primary. So and it is started it back. So that's actually it. The switchover is completed. What it will do as part of the switchover, it will create set up all the parameters to replicate the database back to original primary and run the data patch here. And you can see it is already running data patch here. Is running all patch and everything else. It is setting up listener network and all verification. So if we go inside database and check, oh, it should be opened after a while. We need to run data patch first, but it will take some time. So that migration is almost completed. The couple of steps with data patch and post user action, we didn't specify any special action, but open target is already, and so I think I probably need another maybe 1-2 minutes to complete it, but I think we are done here.
Oh, good. You can take your time.
All right. Do we have any questions so far? No, I don't see any questions.
Not at the moment. No.
Oh, good. when I presented a couple of weeks ago on Toronto users group, it was a quite interesting question. Can we do something in between the phases if we post? Yes, we can actually, and it is one of the main beauties. So you start your replication, you do your tests. For example, you can switch your database in the cloud before cutover time to snapshot standby, run all the tests and everything what you want, then return back to standby mode and resume your ZDM tool, because ZDM is just orchestration tool. It is not like monitoring tool for your database. Read write, everything is already completed. And if we select, let me select double space name and encrypted. You can see that user table space is already encrypted. So it did encrypt your table space users, it switched it over, it ran data patch, everything is done, and clean it up after execution. Oh, it is still running the data patch. So in my opinion, it is worth to try if you plan any migration. And even if you don't plan any migration, it is worth to try just to see and reverse engineering. For example, I found a pretty interesting new rman command and how you can use an rman clone encrypt your data files. I didn't know about that command before. So quite interesting. And thank you very much for your time. And I hope you get some interesting information and probably useful information in your DBA life. Thank you
so much, Gleb. Like always, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. It's always good to have you on board, and thank you for sharing your knowledge with the APAC community and all the community around the world. As I mentioned before, this session will be playback. We'll have a playback for 2 weeks. If you have any questions, please feel free to post in the playback page that's available, and then you can interact with Gleb, asking questions, comments, anything you wanted. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.